you're anything like me, you've really enjoyed the last 2 months where the news cycle doesn't feel like someone's ripping at your nervous system every single day. But if you were anywhere in the last week or so, you heard a little bit about this ship. The ship that was blocking the Suez Canal, a 400-meter container ship the size of the Empire State Building, blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days. That represents 12% of all global trade passing through the canal every day. $10 billion lost per day. Talk about a ripple effect from hell. Delayed goods, supply chain nightmares. We don't even yet know what the outcome of that's going to be for our economy. And why are we talking about that here? Because events beyond your control can and actually will have an impact on your business, and you will never guess they're coming. I promise you, unless you were working the Suez Canal, no one woke up that morning expecting that to happen. And that's what happens in this day and age. We live in an interconnected global economy in which you're along for a ride. You're riding a wave of the economy, and you're not in charge of particular events. And how does that apply to Dragonproof? That's because the dragons always change, and usually while your eye's on something else. And usually it's not on the Suez Canal. So to unpack these themes, we're going to welcome a special guest to share his odyssey through e-commerce, the many obstacles sellers faced over the past 20 years, and a longtime acquaintance, business friend, and a former customer of Miva's, Todd Theodossin. Todd, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Rick.
So Todd, just his backstory, was owner and operator of mypapershop.com, and he rode multiple e-commerce waves, and we're going to have Todd tell us a little bit about his story because he's seen many dragons. So I would argue the first dragon was really the fight for early adoption. I know back, Todd, what year did you start? What year did you first start in e-commerce?
2000. I think we launched our first site in 2001.
Okay. So, back then, the cloud as we know it today, AWS did not exist. There was no Azure. You would go rent space on a server from a hosting company. Good chance that hosting company was in someone's closet. And you would figure out all the technical details to get online. So what was the establishment's point of view on e-commerce in the early 2000s, Todd?
Well, just finding a product that, you could sell was a challenge. I think what happened with me is that I kind of fell into a business that manufactured the products that I ended up selling online. So, when I graduated from college, I moved to LA initially because I wanted to be an actor. And so I actually went to acting school.
It's happened to the best of us.
Yeah. So I went to acting school at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, did that for a few years, and I was working as a sales rep. And the first major job that I got was selling mailing equipment in Los Angeles. And that led ultimately to a job selling paper goods. And the company I worked for sold paper tray liners that fit on hospital food service trays. So
that's a specific niche.
That's all they sold. And people couldn't believe that I got a job doing that, but that's how I started in the paper business. And, I did really well in sales. I sales, rep of the year, and I built a good business and increased sales. And, throughout time, we got purchased by another company, and the company that purchased us had a tabletop paper decor line for food service. So they made paper placemats, napkins, table covers that were kind of fancy but made out of paper.
And back then, all this was sold how? How would someone buy these products?
They would buy it from a food service distributor or brick and mortar. So, back in the day when I started, when, my job basically was gone, and then I started in a new position in San Diego and Los Angeles counties, and I'm calling on food service distributors. So in a food service distributor, brick and mortar, you might have 40 or 50 slots where you're going to stock a product that's yours. Everything else is either drop ship or you bring it in with a bigger shipment, and then it goes on a customer's grocery order. So that's how the products are sold.
Did those companies you were working with, I bet you were working with people who didn't even know what the internet was.
They didn't know what the internet was. And in 98, I told my roommate from college, we went to San Diego State together, and I said, hey man, I think I can make money selling this product online. I just don't know how. But I think the internet is going to be the way to go. I think that, you'll walk down the street and just talk into your phone and say, I want, pink paper napkins.
And this is in 1998.
It was 98. And I just was looking, I had to hustle. I was originally from Detroit. My first business was cutting lawns when I was 10 years old, you know what I mean? And I always was hustling, and I was looking for for things to do. And I remember when I was in acting school at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, they used to say that the answer to the problem is the problem itself. And I wanted to make more money, but what did I know how to do at that time where I could make more money? I didn't want to start a brick and mortar because there was a ton of competition. E-commerce was new. It's like the Wild West, the new frontier.
Now, did you try to talk them into doing it, or did you immediately know you were going to do it yourself?
I couldn't do it myself because I was working for them.
Yeah.
And I had a baby. I was married. I had a 1-year-old, and so my buddy from college said, "Okay, well, we'll partners in this deal, and I'll go to them. You write a script and tell me how to sell it." So I already knew the CEO. I mean, I knew him because he bought the company I worked for, and I had met with him. So I wrote the script. My buddy went to them, called them, and said, "Hey, we want to sell our product online. We know you drop ship the product for, X, Y, a famous food service distributor nationally. Why don't you drop ship for us online?"
And what'd they say to that?
Well, I'm not sure. And we said, "Look, there's no cost to you. You just do the thing you do every day, which is shipping boxes, and we'll try to sell them online." And that's how I sold it to them. And they talk about you got to have a little bit of luck. I mean, I don't know. They gave us the product line to sell on the internet, and I thought that was a lucky break, but they didn't do us any favors with pricing. And I knew that because I was working there. So I ended up leaving that job. We launched the website, and initially it was a proprietary shopping cart, and it's a crazy deal. I was introduced to this guy who was a programmer in San Diego, and he actually escaped Iran on a camel. He was a Jew, and his father was a brain surgeon, and they escaped Iran on camels with guns firing in the background, as he explained it to me. And he came here, and he became a programmer, and he owned a hosting company. So that closet you're talking about was his. That's how we hosted.
Yep.
So when we started.
what you're telling me, clearly, I mean, yeah, you need luck for those things. But I mean, early e-commerce, I would say all business, but early e-commerce especially was for hustlers, and you were out hustling.
Yeah, I was a hustler. The Detroit hustle, Motown hustle. So basically, my family relocated to Orange County, just before I started high school. So I'm out here and I'm looking for a way that I can do something different. And so we get this cart running, the shopping cart. And then, with server overload and everything else, only certain times of the day does the site work. Right. And then it's clunky, as you would say at Miva. And a buddy of mine who had introduced us said, "Hey, I live in San Diego." He was going to law school, and he goes, "There's this company, Miva, that you could talk to." And so 2003, I was like, I'm ready for Miva because there's no way I can grow my business with this cart. It's not going to work, or this hosting.
Now, we're going to get back to, or we're going to get to in a second, the dreaded words from Google that most people have forgotten at this point are penguin and panda. But between that point and penguin and panda, what was the edge? Like, how did you make that work other than hustling? Like, was it SEO? Was it just margin? Was it getting the product out the door? What was the secret sauce in that, under that first dragon? And I would argue that first dragon, if you will, was people just ignoring the internet, traditional business. I mean, I remember how I did business back then, and, you were calling people. I was using Goldmine. It wasn't connected to the internet, and you were just dialing for dollars every day. And that's how the world worked.
We had major retailers in the U.S. faxing their credit card information because they didn't want to put it on the internet, or they'd fax a purchase order. Well, we're not going to take a purchase order and then, as a small business, float the company, a multi-billion-dollar company, for 6 months, on some small invoice. So we were like, well, we don't take POs, but you got a credit card, we'll do it. So from the beginning, we were 100% e-commerce. I didn't even care about anything locally or a warehouse or anything. It was just, that was the new frontier. And so we just started selling, and it took me 4 years of working every day selling online to make a living doing it to support my family.
So how confident were you, or how long did it take to gain confidence that you knew this was going to work?
Within 2 years, I knew it would work eventually, because the sales between the first year and the second year were double. Yep. So I knew that eventually it was going to take off. Getting people to order online. I mean, I remember my in-laws telling me, "Who's going to order table covers on the computer?" And I was like, "Well, they're going to do it," and I'm trying to convince my wife, "You said this was going to take off." And, I said, "Just have some faith," and I just kept working. I mean, I don't know what else to do. You work, and I did whatever I had to do to make it work. And then, I ended up buying out my partner, I think in 2006. And in 2005, I made enough to pay myself a small wage. And in 2007, the sales took off. Whatever I had been doing in 2005 and 6, it finally started to go. And, we had 50% gains, 70% gains in sales. And, I go from, working in my home to having to get an office somewhere. And, I have to hire employees. And I've got an employee handbook, and we've got medical insurance and all those things. And I got to get people trained really quick. So I just basically hired some people, young people that were, willing to do something different online and wanted to learn. And I taught them how to talk to customers and what to say. And they plug in with headsets and we talk. We talk to customers. And I trained them on the products. And I said, I just want you in a year to become an expert on our product line. Be able to talk to people and, ask, answer technical questions about the product. So that's what we did.
And then you had that ran, 2005 sort of being the good kickoff when you started paying yourself. And I'm sure you probably know better than I do because I forget exactly the year, but was it 2012 when Penguin and Panda hit?
I don't know Penguin, but Panda hit in 2012. And
you had about 7 years before Google changed the game.
Right. Google changed the game then. And then, I realized in 2008, so where I grew up in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, this kid that I've been friends with, we've been lifelong friends, we were playing in the street, he became a patent attorney. And in 2008, he said, Todd, you have to protect your intellectual property. You need a copyright and a trademark. So we copyrighted and trademarked all of our content that we had created. It was organic. We made it in-house. We didn't outsource it. It was all keyword rich. And that was important, but then, if Google's allowing people to poach and to steal what you've written, there's no way of enforcing that. And as a small business, there's only so much funds you have to protect copyright,
No, absolutely. I'm just thinking through that transition. I know at Miva, what was happening was, iPhone came out in 2007. And initially there was this sense that no one's ever going to buy anything from their phone. By the way, just a quick aside, 2021, and we're seeing 65-70% of traffic coming from phones. But 2007, no one thinks anyone's ever buying anything from a phone. It's a pain in the ass to type your data in and put a credit card in and all that stuff. And somewhere, so 2011, 12, Penguin and Panda hit. Penguin, for those listening, was Google. Google used to name their algorithms. Now they name them by month and the city that PubCon's in or something. But back then they would name their algorithm updates based on random stuff. Penguin was one, Panda was one. And so one of them, or those two together, were probably the most earth-shaking ones in the last, maybe ever. And they, if you can go back in time, what you'll remember is you used to search for stuff on Google and get really cruddy results. So you'd find these pages, you'd search for something and it would feel like someone had a page that was going to answer your question, and you'd get there and it would just be ads and there'd be nothing on it. So it was a really big content push. And in all of that, there was also the beginning of the switch to mobile. So there was kind of this thing happening at Google where, for better or for worse, Google is a dragon, and they stepped into being a dragon, and I think they knew, giving them the benefit of the doubt, because there's plenty of things I could say, and I'll let Todd diss on Google if he wants to, but I think they knew that they were going to shape the future of the internet. So they sat down and said, what do we want it to look like? We want high quality content. We want fast pages. We want things that work on any device. And I'm guessing it was starting in this conversation with your IP attorney friend that you started realizing content was going to be king into this next phase. Is that right?
Content was king, and the ability to protect what you had written or created was king. But enforcing it with Google, I thought when we went to schematic markup on pages back in 15 or 16, I thought that would provide Google a way with, giving ownership to the person that first created the content.
Yeah, and they've never really solved that problem.
It did solve the problem, but it was an issue. So in 2008, we do the copyright. In 2010, I come to a conference, and you guys have a mobile site that you developed in Bootstrap.
Yep.
So I was one of the first person. I think at the conference, I'm like, hey, sign me up, man. I want to do this. Because I knew.
I have a vague recollection of that.
Do you remember that? I was
Yeah,
there.
I remember us announcing that product, and I remember you being really excited. I mean, you were always, and I think this is kind of going into what I want to touch on here. You were always cutting edge. I mean, you were taking, obviously, you have natural sales skills. I think that's, the Detroit hustle, as you called it. I don't know if can compare SoCal hustle where I come from, but certainly there's a vibe to people who get out and rainmaking, as they call it. And you were always ahead of the curve, right? And you were adopting new skills that traditional salespeople and entrepreneurs had not adopted. You could see something coming, and you weren't worried about in-laws or anyone else telling you that no one's going to buy from their desktop or their phone or whatever.
No, I wasn't. At that point. I was making money, more than I'd ever made, and I was just getting started. And I thought, well, if I'm going to continue this, then there's some things I have to change and I have to become better at. One of them was mobile. The other was finding other suppliers that could sell what I was selling. I mean, I had one company that I could find that was willing to drop ship, and there had been so much consolidation in that industry that I was in that there weren't companies that I had. I remember going to party shows and, hey, I love your products. Will you drop ship? No. And I was a drop shipper. I was a drop shipper from '98. I figured out that I could do that. And, if you're going to ship for a food service distributor, brick and mortar, why not ship for an internet business? Right. So my problem was I was worried that the manufacturer would, wake up 5, 6, 7 years. They were late on everything and say, oh, well, why do we need distributors? We'll just
do it direct.
We'll do it direct. And so
are they yet doing it direct? Have they woken up yet?
They did. And we can get to that. But so I couldn't find anyone. Long story short, I couldn't find anyone. Business is great. We're creating content. Amazon's calling me on the phone in 2010 and saying, please sell on our site, please. Yeah. And I mean, we're so busy with business created from Google organic traffic. And I mean, we're just like, phones ringing all day and people want to talk on the phone. So you answer the phone and your products, forget it. They're going to come back, right?
I think I think you're highlighting something that's often forgotten in all aspects of e-commerce that I talk to people, and this wasn't one of our sort of talking points for the day, but people assume e-commerce and they assume that it's this faceless, nameless, conversationless thing that happens on the internet. And my experience is that the internet is an enabler of commerce, right? The internet's almost a strange term now because everything's interconnected, but the idea is you have content that drives people to want to have a conversation. And that conversation might be with the content on your page, it might be with an AI bot, and it might be with you personally, but it's just really a facilitation method to get you to engage with them.
Correct. Engagement, knowing your product. And I remember hearing over and over, oh my God, you answer the phone and you're real and you know your product. And, I remember telling my buddy from college when we started in '98 or had the idea, I said, the internet and, these search engines or whatever search engine we had then, I don't know who it was, it's going to become the biggest phone book in the world because we had
Yahoo.
phone books.
It would have been Yahoo back then. Alta Vista would have been kind of falling apart in Yahoo.
Yeah.
Before we move on to what I'll call the third dragon, I want to finish one more thing on Google. How did you untangle what, both just anecdotally and maybe from an analysis perspective? I mean, one of the big hells of working with Google is they don't tell you the rules of the game. How did you deal with that across thousands of products, understanding or navigating unspoken opaque rules that you have to apply across a strangely similar and simultaneously diverse product line?
So I spent thousands of hours, and I'm not kidding you, reading and, working with some of the top SEO people in the country. After in 2012, when Panda hit, we took a hit and I could feel it. I could just feel it in the amount of activity there was on the site. In 2000, I would say maybe January, February of 2013, I was looking to, actual live pages in Google, and I see this new company that's selling the same product. They're ranking right next to us. And it turned out that this company had just gotten into the online selling of the same product we had, and they had copied word for word, same punctuation, thousands and thousands of product descriptions. So now I'm like, okay, this is not good. So I contact the intellectual property law firm in Chicago, and I'm like, we need help. These guys are plagiarizing. And I think it was May 10th of 2013, the second version of Panda ran. Yep. And we have a company who's infringed us, and copied everything. And then we get hit with Panda, like beyond what I can even tell you. Like it was a boom. When you look at a chart, it was just so.
I mean, I remember you showing me your Google Analytics at the time, and I don't recall the details, but it was like a 50% drop in an incredibly short period.
Right. And so by the time we get the company to take down the product, it's a couple months. And back in those days, Google's manually pushing. AI isn't there yet. They're manually pushing updates. When are you going to run another one? 6 months, a year? Do you get to the point where you get out of it at 6 months? And then if you miss it, do you get out? How long can you go without traffic? You know what I mean? That's what becomes a problem.
I mean, one of the things I look back on those on hindsight with those updates is I think there's a direct correlation between Penguin, Panda, and Google's desire to create what I would say is high quality web content in an imperfect world, and the rise of Amazon for selling everything. Now, Amazon was poised to take it, but suddenly, because Amazon was so authoritative, they had the best ranking on almost any keyword they wanted. I mean, is that what you experienced?
Well, I did. And so let's say that there was an algorithm update. I go to Search Engine Roundtable. I read an article that it's updated. I go into Webmaster Hangout. I see people around, Australia, New Zealand, around the world saying, hey, there's a dance going on. Something's going on, because I was on page 1. Now I'm on page 32. And I thought to myself, you know what? Amazon is going to kill it, because right now, I think 8 out of 10 searches to buy something in the U.S. starts in Amazon.
Yep. Yeah. I haven't seen the updated numbers, but it wasn't long ago that it was 62 or 65%. So you're close for sure, if not on.
And back in 2014, we're syndicating a feed. And then we find out, well, the feed is the same as your website, or 12. So you need a whole new feed, and whatever content you have on your live website is now tainted. It's soil. It's not unique because they've seen it somewhere else.
Yep.
So we're working with some top SEOs. So you're creating content repeatedly, trying to chase yourself, and then the business becomes.
And by the way, how many different ways can you describe a paper guest towel?
Well, I've written thousands of descriptions, and I come up. My list of adjectives is diverse. You got to work it. You got to work it. A lot of late nights, but everything has to be unique. And you can't put all your products in a drop-down menu because you want to write one description. You just can't. That's not how people shop. So, the challenge was writing. We wrote 8,000 product descriptions new. And I had to outsource that. I didn't have the bandwidth in my office to handle it, nor the writers that could do it. Then when the content comes in, I had to go through and keyword populate it properly so it flows nicely in the way it sounds. So I'm working those descriptions, and other people, we're racing to get content up, new content.
Yep.
And then Penguins, I could talk to you about Penguin. I mean, I know a lot about that one. I worked with Marie Haynes, who became a Penguin expert out of Ontario, Canada. And, everybody, I've been online at that point, 12, 13 years. And so you're going to have unnatural links built to your site just
Sure.
for the state of the internet, the way it was. And then she says, well, you do have unnatural links. And initially, when we first did a Penguin cleanup, we had to contact.
That's what Penguin was about. Total side story, and I won't take too much time on this. Miva got kicked out of Google search results for about 90 days because, if you recall back then, it was the normal thing for an e-commerce platform to put a link to themselves on the footer of their customers' websites. So we had all these websites that said powered by Miva with a link back, and Google decided manually that was an unnatural link, and so they kicked us out. We had to go no follow all those links. We had to push out a no follow update through the core software, and then write a mea culpa to Google to get back in the search results.
We had to contact the people that were building the improper links with a letter to request them to remove it. And it was I had to outsource it to an SEO firm in Seattle. It was a big mess. And then I worked with Marie, and even after like 1 or 2 cleanups, there were still things that needed to be cleaned. And then we did it. And it took a lot of capital. It took time. You're not, looking at growing your business. You're chasing what Google.
You're cleaning up a mess, not of your own making.
Right. And I'm like, and for a small business, I mean, if you're Walmart, you have 100 people that can work at that. But, we're a small business, and it was challenging.
At what point during this process, since you said Amazon was knocking on your door to sell, did you start selling via Amazon?
Initially, no.
But at some point, did you?
Yes, we syndicated a feed, I think in 11.
Okay, and then how long did you ride them as a channel before, or maybe you didn't, but I'm going to presume an answer here. How long did you ride them as a channel before you started being worried about them?
15.
So you used them essentially as a sales channel for 4 years, and then what was the epiphany that, maybe I'm not in control of this particular dragon?
So what happens is we in 2013, the manufacturer who we were working with, they looked at their web accounts, their internet accounts. They would call them web accounts in those days. They were down 22% for 2013. So the manufacturer decides we're going to secretly launch a website that's not in our brand name to compete for the lost business that we've had. And they basically use my, layout, and they use the keyword research that we've done. But the big kicker is here, you can analyze keywords, but if you're selling the product at your distributor's cost, and then that's an unfair disadvantage, the inequities in pricing. So the next thing we see is that in 2015, this new site pops up, and like every page we're on in Google, they're right there. And we start analyzing the site, and it's like they're denying it, and it's like the same look and feel as ours. Some of the meta descriptive content is similar. Keywords are all focused on what we're doing, and we got a problem. And then I start looking at pricing, and they start syndicating a feed to Amazon, but they're an FBA vendor. So I'm selling on, I'm advertising in Amazon and then drop shipping from their warehouses. And then they take over. And within a year and a half, we cannot sell on Amazon. So we lose that channel. They take it over, they build a storefront, and the route is on. And then, at that point, we'd already redesigned the site, rebuilt the content, and then we went responsive with Miva on the new design. So our mobile traffic jumps dramatically. We go to subscriptions. That's successful, but we're hanging on, but we can't, we don't control the price. And there's
Sure.
there's so much I can do. And I'm like, sending the CEO, here's an example of what you're selling it on Amazon. That's $3 over cost versus what I pay, and then, crickets.
Right. Yeah. No. Essentially what happened is Amazon almost ignited a kind of warfare over content pricing, et cetera. And then I'm assuming I'm going to make this jump for us. Talk to me about what happened when Chinese firms started competing directly in America. Like, walk us through that transition and what it meant to your business.
Okay, so I would say in the beginning, most of the products were made in the U.S. So they're made in a union plant in the Midwest. And then, the party decor items, the streamers and, banners and things like that, those are all made in China. But the core product that you sit on the table, the paper plates, napkins, and so on, they're made here. Plastic cutlery, that's China. I think the last company, that was in Arizona that made plastic cutlery, they're gone. So all the plastic cutlery in the country is made in China. What I see is like 2010, 2011, a slow migration and rolling changes with the manufacturer where all of a sudden American-made product becomes Chinese product and there's no announcement. So a customer gets, 10 boxes of doilies that are made in the United States and New Zealand, let's say, and this really did happen. And then another 100 cases made in China that are completely horrible quality. And they're like, hey, this is what I've been ordering for you for years, and this is what's made in China. So we find out that, that particular pattern of product needed a new stamping equipment, and you're looking at, $200,000 to replace the stamps to make the doilies. Doilies are something that, you put food on to make them look, decorative. And so I start seeing more and more China. And then in 2012, 13, we're just getting hit up at my paper shop with email after email with Chinese manufacturer. Hey, we make for X company, who's our supplier and manufacturer. We'll get you a good price. This will be
Right.
a new journey and, whatever, but I don't stock products, so I don't care, And then we have firms from China calling the office and, want to talk to the decision maker. So I see just tons of China after 2012, like tons.
Now, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming what's going on is, so now you have this direct entrance into the commerce market at the wholesale level, direct from China, where pretty much for all eternity before that, there was a process of getting the goods here and being sold by people here, and that would be true anywhere, not just in America. And then on the other end of that, Amazon, as we just said, somewhere between 65 and 80% of e-commerce searches start on Amazon now. Amazon has become the centralized hub where people are looking for products. And so it seems to me that these Chinese manufacturers started playing both ends. So they're making the product, and then I know the more recent thing is they're selling the product on Amazon, and they're sort of squeezing the independent guy from both sides. Was that basically how you saw it?
Right. So what I start seeing is import product on Amazon, where they have, they set up a corporation in LA County. There's a resident agent, because I know, corporate structures, and, there's no one answers the phone, and they're just shipping in containers to distribution centers at Amazon all over the country. So they have direct access to the American consumer with very little output, and they don't need to do anything but put the product on Amazon, because the searches to buy are there. Yep. So it's like, it's a great way to gain sales, and then they sell to people that are going to stock the product in containers. Let's say I'm a warehouse in LA and I order in a container, they sell there, but then they're just destroying, there's no margin on what, they're selling direct on Amazon. They're just killing the market. So it's even hard for American manufacturers to compete when that's happening.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Do we have and the question, as you know, is we don't have that kind of access to their market. No, it's a closed market for the most part.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, look, this is any successful environment's a high pressure environment for sellers. And then, you went through arguably one of the most heartbreaking things any business owner does, right? So you had a good run, close to 20 years, and then ultimately you make a decision to shut down My Paper Shop. What year was that?
18.
So you were in business for 17 years. Is that about right?
17 years. And then, the manufacturer comes back, and what they see is by squeezing their distributors with the direct selling on Amazon and squeezing distributors with selling on their company website, less people are buying and less distributors are buying from them, and their sales are going down. Yep. So they come out with this new program, Q4 of 18, and they're like, hey, we'll make it so you can, get your margin on Amazon, and they told me, like, on your number one selling item, we're going to put $100,000 to your bottom line. And I'm like, look, you guys have decimated my business. I'm back to 2003. Should I start over again and work another 15 years to build it up?
Right.
And I was like, thanks, but no thanks. And I punted. I just said, it was tough, man. I'd worked all those years, and I had, my business, once they went direct, the business, I couldn't sell it. I mean, there's just no way.
Yeah. I mean, look, that is heartbreaking, and there's no doubt, but you've also successfully, for 18 years, navigated what I would argue is three different dragons, right? The early adopter dragon, the Google dragon, and the Amazon dragon. And apply that persistence with your Detroit hustle. What is next for you in a post-COVID world?
I'm trying to figure that out. I mean, I don't know. The thing I liked about e-commerce is that, when I was back in LA doing theater, I like to be creative. And I thought, man, e-commerce for a business, you got to be creative. So I want to do something creative in the future. It's a new beginning,
I'll say this, if anyone's listening, I've known Todd now for going on 20 years. And I, as running Miva for 10 plus years while he was running My Paper Shop, you certainly have a unique vantage point on the marketplace. E-commerce, you understand trends, and the thing you articulated throughout this whole interview is you sort of see what's coming around the corner, right? You saw the internet was going to come up, you saw the changes in Google, you saw the importance of content, and you ultimately could see the distribution squeeze that comes between direct to consumer and China and all that stuff. So, I really hope someone listening can take advantage of all that knowledge. Todd, how do people find you?
On LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. There's very few Theodossin. So
do you want to spell Theodossin for everyone?
Sure. It's TheoDossisn.
Now, how do you know there's only 5 Theodossins in the world?
because my grandfather, when he came here from Greece, changed the name. And I think, there's maybe 5, 6 people, my sister, my dad's still going, that use Theodossin. So there aren't a lot of people in the
So
world.
your
with that
family
name.
literally created the name.
They created the name. They wanted to Americanize it. And boy, it was hard for people to pronounce, I can tell you that. But most people just call me Theo for his nickname. So Todd Theo, you can find me. And yeah, that's how you do it.
I appreciate you being on the show today. I know people listening will appreciate your journey because, the thing that's consistent across all business, I don't care who you are or what you're doing, is if you're taking your business seriously, you wake up every day and you wonder what's coming at you today. And there's great, wonderful things that come from being in business. There's very high highs, but you're always looking for what's coming up, and you seem to have navigated that well, and I'm sure you're going to navigate those in the future extremely well. So, Todd, thank you for joining us today. I look forward to hearing about your next adventure and catching up with you soon.
Good talking to you, Rick. Thank you.